Welcome to Free Range Sailing. This week we go back and forward in time as Troy and I give you a tour of the remaining items that we have constructed or restored on Mirrool's deck over our extensive 9-month refit. For those of you that are new here, our boat Mirrool is a Clansman 30. She's a fiberglass 30-foot masthead sloop built in New South Wales in 1969. We are currently giving her a long overdue refit in Tasmania, with plans to set sail soon for the Australian summer. To support our project and to remain notified of all our upcoming releases, thanks for subscribing to our channel and hitting the bell button. We built our sea hood in tandem with our Dodger, going backwards and forwards between our friend's shed and the boatyard for the build and custom shaping. We created the bend in the roof by screwing it in place and adding a layer of fiberglass and epoxy resin to hold it in shape.
Okay, so there's the roof for our sea hood. Anyone that doesn't know, a sea hood is just a cover for your hatch to stop the sea from getting into it, right? The hatch will retreat into it, but you've seen as I was getting this curve. So now I want to make this so that we can jump on it. We're not actually going to jump on it, but we want to be able to fall against it or whatever. So I've just got some of this foam. I glued it in place and I've rounded it off so it's a nice smooth arch, and then we'll just get some of this tape and we'll lay it on there, and that curve in the tape, once it's cured, will make this really, really strong.
With the top strengthened, it was time to create the sides to streamline the design with the lines of our Dodger and coach top.
Oh yeah. Packing tape. Look at that. It replicated the wrinkles that were in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But what we want to do is we want to make a front piece joined to this, and then we'll put some thickened compound in here and bring more double bias glass to come over here and join with that. We'll glue that in place, and then on this underside we'll fair that off and we'll run a bit of glass over to join to that, and then we'll have a nice, well, this foam, this would be a weak edge otherwise, but because we've got two bits of glass joining together and making a nice thick lip, that should work pretty well. Custom lip, so we can just cut that with scissors now. So this overlaps too far at the moment, and we'll trim it so it just overlaps about here, and that will give me enough to make a bit of a lip. If you haven't really considered it before, and we learnt this from our friend David in Cairns building that space age cat of his, that this cellophane packaging tape, just like or your boxes and stuff like that, it makes just a really great release for epoxy. So you can see that whatever shape you want, if you can make it out of foam or whatever you want, wrap it in packaging tape and not have too many wrinkles because it will replicate it, you can make a male mould for just about anything you want out of epoxy really, really quickly and easily. All right, here's our sea hood. So we skipped all the painting and fairing part of it, but you can trust me that we did do it. And here it is. So first up, it's light, okay, because it's made of that foam, isn't it? So under here it's still unfinished, so we just got to paint that white. That just on this forward lip, we've just put some rubber weather stripping, okay, and also stuck to the actual boat itself is the same stuff. And that's just to, you know, like when a wave wants to climb aboard, it'll hit that rubber and just run off. With this stuff, it'll stop a wave coming in like this, but oftentimes water still gathers under these, and a lot of sea hoods, you'll have holes off to the side to drain water. Just by leaving this a little bit chamfered, we'll have water that's in there will be able to drain out the front. So that won't be too bad. If a little bit goes down the back, it won't be a big deal because it'll just go down to the side of the Dodger, run out that nice fillet, which we've seen it do. Here where we've built this, obviously it's been drilled out, and I filled it with epoxy, then drilled the epoxy with a 1/4" bit, tapped it, and now we've got stainless steel helicoils in here, and that is what receives our M6 countersunk machine screws, and that's what holds it in. If any water leaks past here, it's not going to really do a great deal of damage because I've drilled the wood out and backfilled it with an epoxy plug. Epoxy doesn't mind being in water, just ask the boat. So that's what that is. It doesn't need to be super strong. Our lives won't be threatened if this pops off, but it really shouldn't. We'll be able to remove this. What I'll do is when we come finally time to stick it down, I'll just put a ring of butyl tape around each one of these and probably throw a fair bit of lanolin grease under each one of these and down the thread as well. So that should keep that from all corroding and going crazy. We didn't want to add additional weight, so this is just 450 double bias glass, both sides. Then of course we molded these nice rounded shapes out of the same foam and just hot glued them on and used that as a form to put this tape over it. Okay, that's 100mm tape laid over, and that curved surface this way and this way makes that incredibly strong without much of a weight penalty. And of course this is very smooth, it's as smooth as packing tape, so it really mates on this exactly, it mirrors it. So when it actually goes on, that goes against that seal. This one is very tight, like as in a fingernail. You could just fit a bit of paper through there, I reckon, or maybe some packing tape. That's about the thickness it is off there. We didn't bring it all the way down, it just needs to shed water, and so look, it overlaps by about 3/4 inch there, 19mm, and that's it. Every boat's got the problem of getting their wiring into their mast. You've got navigation lights. In our case, we've got a VHF antenna up there. And we chose to tackle it by doing this. So we've put a cam lock fitting in the deck. You saw us putting it all in, but this is the finished product. So we've got our hose here. Gives a good enough gooseneck for water not to really want to get in there. Right here that's just there for chafe and damage protection, a little bit of mechanical protection just as it enters in the mast, and then I've pushed that up into the hose, so this is what makes everything waterproof. How this is held to the mast is I got a couple of sail slides from Russell at Storm Bay Sails up there, who made all this for us. We got these sail slides and I just slotted them in and zippy tied it to there, so it's actually got a little bit of movement. It's independent of what the mast does. Hopefully the mast isn't going to be moving that much. And incidentally, we chose these cam locks. What's going on up there? We chose these cam locks just because if the mast goes overboard and we lose it, of course this will go too, but we'll be able to cap this and fix the hole in the deck. So there we go, that's the finished product that you saw us putting in. With all of our installations up at the top of the mast and down here, I've made sure I've done a couple of loops of wire, so if we ever need to do any work on it, we'll have enough slack wire. Sometimes installations I've seen, they look beautiful, everything is just absolutely perfectly routed, but there's no wiggle room. So we've made sure in all of our installations, and particularly in the wind generator where I put an Anderson plug on it, we've got a nice big service loop. So if we ever want to pull it away, we'll have that wire. We just have to undo a few zippy ties and we'll have, you know, a bit of slack to work with, which is a nice thing for the future. Now this is our boom that Scott gave us, and we've gone through the renovation of it a bit, and here it is actually installed on the boat. Some of the ideas that we really like and we worked out with Russell, there's a couple of things. This rope bag is going to be really great, okay? And it's just made so that it's clipped on. It's not fastened on permanently. It can easily be taken off and it can be adjusted. So a little batten in there holds it quite rigid. It's free to swing and it misses our what do you call this, a vang. So that's all really great. Already we've found this really useful, and it's very airy, the ropes will dry. Really great. So that was a good thing. One of the things that we really particularly like is this awning. So when we got this, when we got the boom, it came with this sail track here. And I drilled all the old rivets out and I had a look behind there. It was in pretty good condition. When Scott had this boom, he quite liberally used a lot of lanolin grease on it, so it was in good nick. But back there was a bit ratty, and I didn't know whether, you know, I was looking at it, I didn't know what to do to fill all those holes. So what we settled on was to put the sail track back, and then we spoke to the sail maker and we just asked him to make an awning that's got a bolt rope that fits this track. So what we've got now is an awning, and you can see this one on the back here. It's got an awning that lives on the boom. It never has to be taken off. When we go sailing, this and these straps I put on myself, these straps hold it nice and tight against the boom like that when it's stowed. At the moment I want to leave that because it's incredibly sunny. So this stays put. We can just lift it out the way and get to those cleats. That's no big drama. But it also means, one of the things that we've only just found out is most awnings are either up or they're down, whereas this one, you can have the sunny side down and have the other side completely open for airflow or whatever, free passage. And as the sun goes over higher, we can just roll that one up and lower the other one. Or of course we can have them all down. When we're going and swinging to anchor, obviously the wind will be free to rush through this triangle, giving us a nice cool breeze. You know, getting down below, but it'll stop the sun from getting to the deck, and that's, you know, that's a big deal. So we're really happy with that. That's kind of a pretty good innovation. How this is attached is it's got stainless steel clips all the way along, and they're just held on with this shock cord. So each one has double stainless eyelets, and then it's just put a loop out and tie stopper knots at the back and through that. So really easy to replace. You know, we'll just carry a bit of shock cord and it's neither here nor there, but it's got quite a bit of, you know, give in the wind. This one of course has a bit of line that we can just tie up here just so it doesn't rattle around in the wind. One of the features that we worked out as well is a nice, it's not a very stiff batten. It's a pretty low-key batten that runs the entire length. What that means that if one of us is just rolling it up prior to going for a sail, you know, it'll all roll up fairly uniformly and we won't end up with like a snake that swallowed a dog sort of look. So that's really good. All of this stuff is good quality Sunbrella, you know, synthetic canvas. So it should be relatively waterproof, but it should be very colour fast and last a long time, because we've had Sunbrella stuff before and we don't really bother with anything else. It all just fades or turns everything it touches blue or some other thing. But this should be really good. If we look up here, there's a couple of windows being cut in the canvas where it's where it attaches to the bolt rope. So there's a few of these. So there's one here to let our rope bag strap go through, but further as we go down, there's another one for the boom vang, because I've made a Dyneema strop to go around, so it needed to miss that. And of course, where the reefing lines go through the sail, I'm going to tie it around the boom with a timber hitch. So we just needed a couple of gaps in there. So we just worked that out with the sail makers. We saw where the first, second and third reef are going to be, and we just left those little windows. So later on, I'll just tie those reef lines in. I haven't done it yet. We just put these awnings up because it just makes working under here just a dream. The UV is so strong here. I end up with a big burnt nose. Well, I started with a big nose and now I've got a big burnt nose.
We wanted to keep the original front hatch, but it was in need of some serious repair and strengthening. First things first was removing the hinges and rusty screws. I used the drill to countersink both sides of the hole to make a nice hourglass shape, so the thickened epoxy plug would not fall out once set. Here Troy laid up thickened epoxy and fiberglass strips on packing tape to rebuild part of the hatch lip that had completely worn away.
You can actually feel the wax that's come off the epoxy, so we'll wash that. Water soluble, so we'll wash that away. There's a bit more work to do before we rebuild the lip.
We cut a slit down one side of this 1/4 inch clear plastic tubing to position it on the lip of the hatch. This created a large rounded surface area to fiberglass. We used epoxy thickened with fairing cells to create a lead-in for the fiberglass to follow. A nice rounded transition between the tubing and the hatch lip prevents any trapped air bubbles during the layout. Just before we started fiberglassing, we also roughed up the plastic tubing with sandpaper to get good adhesion. Although slightly more expensive, using pre-cut fiberglass tape for these sorts of projects saves time and a lot of mess. We've also found that cut fabric is more difficult to keep in position when wetting out and consolidating. Fast forward to us back in the water, with the hatch faired, painted and with some new rubber seals. It was time to consider how we would install it back on board.
Now we're going to put this part of the hinge on. So this is an old marine bronze hinge. We're going to reuse them. But to make it a lot better, I just want everything equal. So I've put this little rubber spacer, and just to make it waterproof, that rubber spacer is not quite enough. So I've just put a bit of butyl rubber around each one of these screws. And to make that more effective, these have just been countersunk. When you're putting any deck fitting in or making any installation, when you're using this soft butyl rubber, if you can get hold of it, the two things that are the most important is make sure it's clean, no loose dust and stuff that gets in there, but also that countersink. That countersink's probably the most important bit, because as we screw it up, it enables it to press in there and make like a little flexible donut. And it's got enough material there that it can handle the shocks and expansion and whatever else is going to happen to this hinge. So there we go, there's a fair bit there. I did it with the same with this one. You can see there's a bit of squeeze out all around the edge of the rubber as well. And later on, once I've installed it, we'll just get another bit of butyl rubber, probably a little bit bigger than that bit, and we'll just use it to remove it. But if there's any takeaway, countersink is the most important thing if you're using this goopy stuff, and it's the same as if you're using polysulfides for that matter. Anything, it needs that countersink. Inside the hatch, this rubber seal that you see, it's pretty big, and the reason being is like there's gaps around the uneven size of the combing of this old boat that are up to like 3 millimeters of difference. It's not all uniform, and it follows the shape of the boat too. So we've had to go up pretty high, a D profile seal on here, and the adhesive didn't really work that great, even though we got it from a reputable place. It wasn't just, again, bargain basement junk, but the adhesive hasn't really worked out, so I had to use a little bit of polyurethane Gorilla Glue on there, which is messy stuff, but it has stuck it down. Oh, look at that, even that adhesive which had stuck before has failed in time. So when we want to get this off, we're actually going to have to tear it off and then we'll razor blade it off. But it shouldn't need to come off for a while because it won't be in UV, and it should handle a lot of compressions before it's done. And then of course this black rubber here will be really UV resistant, and it mostly presses to the deck, but there's a couple of bits, it's about a toothpick that fits under it where it can get under, and that's not bad because a big wave comes aboard, it'll slow it down enough that this will be able to deal with it, but then any water under there should be able to drain back out, because what we had before, we had a soft seal and the water would force its way under the seal, but it couldn't escape back up, and it would actually build up enough pressure inside our hatch that when the next one came in, it would jam it past the inside seal. So it was a bit of an unexpected thing. We actually had to put little tubes there just to break the seal of it. Trying to keep the ocean out is a challenge. We'll just put the finishing touches on our revamped bow roller. So this has been a little bit of a progression. With a Klansman bow roller, the initial roller was back here, and we've had to fabricate this bit of metal add-on just to bring the bow roller out a bit. But it's a bit of a compromise of trying to bring this out a bit more to accommodate one of these new modern anchors, because with the old bow roller you can see it we've dug into our bow. So there's a compromise between getting that out enough and not putting it out here and increasing the leverage that our chain would have when we're anchored and just tear this whole thing apart. So we've extended it out here. In Townsville we initially made one where the roller was back about an inch, about here. But I asked our friend Pete, whose shed we've been doing the dodgy build, and many people have been admiring the metalworking tools. We asked him for some help, so he, well, I'm not going to say help, he basically did it. He cut out a 30mm strip, welded it in here. I've sort of polished it away, but you can just see a little bit of a line here where the weld has been there. 30mm, so just over an inch, has been added in here to extend it out. We upgraded the roller from a 10mm to a 12mm bolt, and also Pete turned up with HDPE, high density polyethylene, a nice new bow roller for us. So he's turned it down to an outer diameter that I specified, an inside diameter. We got this pretty nice transition here. Just the tooling of the lathe gave that a, it's really going to match the rope really beautifully. It's going to be 14mm rope in here, so there's not going to be a heap of room for it to play around. Down through here I've got 12mm washers to act as a spacer. So this presses down on a stainless steel bush that Pete turned up that fits exactly through the middle of this roller. What that means is, as I'm tightening up this 12mm bolt, and you can get a lot of force on that bolt, they come to bear directly on the bush, but then this roller is free to spin on the bush. It never gets compressed at all. So that's one of Pete's innovations that he encouraged me to use, and we adopted it, and it's just worked so well. So this is where the original roller was for a Klansman, and we just picked up an 8mm hole. So there was only ever an 8mm bolt through there. It was back there. Because we've extended it out to here, we've gone 12mm bolt, bigger rolling diameter for our roller, but we have increased the leverage. Okay, it is only a few inches, but we have increased it, and that's why we've gone pretty beefy. This stainless here, going with marine bronze, there's not too much dissimilar metal corrosion that's going to happen, but everything's been pretty well smeared in there with Tef gel, dissimilar metal compound. Our old boom, I scavenged this bail off it and attached that also with these 8mm bolts. So again, we drilled a hole in here, and Pete tapped that out because tapping stainless isn't that easy. So he's tapped that out to an 8mm thread, so I can put these 8mm button head cap screws in, and that holds our old bail. And that old bail is just the right size where we put these holes to hold down our anchor, so when we're in the sea, it can't jump out of there. And when the anchor's on the ground, of course, the rope can't jump off. So this bail does double duty. I had sort of imagined that we could attach our spinnaker to it. The anchor might add a bit of friction, but now that can't jump upwards, there's no reason why we couldn't put one here, I guess. We'll see how it all goes. a spare hole down here. I was going to brace the bottom of these cheeks together. I don't think I'll bother doing that. That would just be another long pin through there, and this 12mm is just holding that so firmly against that bush, so this is a strong unit. So overall we're really happy with this. The anchor's clear of the front, it doesn't touch anymore. It's as strong as we can possibly make it. We've got 8mm machine screws holding it in, and because I've used the same cap screws here, that's a nice, you know, it's nice and smooth in there, so there's nothing there that we could catch and maybe pull fibres out of our nylon rope. So we've made all of this interior as smooth as we possibly can. So there we go, that's the boring subject of a bow roller, but we're really happy with it. Like, it looks like a good safety addition to our boat.
We removed and re-waterproofed our sink with a thick gusset of butyl tape, as the previous install was prone to the occasional leak in the locker below. Lots of butyl.
But it'll squash into this gap.
Yeah.
It won't come out. So it's got a bit of butyl around it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, another little bit. It's only tiny.
Yeah, that's okay. Oh, look, there's heaps.
Oh yeah, it's
that's
coming.
Right.
It's coming out.
Getting your isometrics.
Actually getting you to do this. Oh, look at it. The thin black line.
Yeah, it'll come out. It's all good.
So even that little line there doesn't. It won't really matter because the water won't get any further than that.
Mm.
Pretty good.
We're pretty close now.
We'll go for sail tomorrow with all those jobs done.
It looks pretty crazy at the moment.
It doesn't look like we're about to go sailing tomorrow.
No. Yes, I'm just putting some last minute paint, throwing some last minute paint around.
Just throwing it against the wall, seeing if it'll stick. Look at that. One of many lists.
That's like 4 weeks of stuff there.
Oh, there's been plenty that hasn't been on the list. Keep coming up with new stuff.
It's the conceptual phase of the Dodger. Yeah.
Explaining to
The
Pasty what the
windows.
windows are going to be like. Oh yeah.
That's the bow roller.
More bow rollering.
That's our lee cloths, pantry lee cloths.
Yeah, not so much design as explaining to each other what we want.
Next week on Free Range Sailing, it's time for a new set of clothes for Mirrool as we take you through the design, fabrication, install and testing of her sails before we begin our passage west. We look forward to joining you then. Bye for now.